Hello and welcome to the State of Shakespeare. I'm Garrett Vandermeer.
And I'm Jim Elliott.
And today on the program, we are joined by a couple of guests who are representing Red Bull Theater's current production of Titus Andronicus, which, by the way, congratulations, was recently extended. We
Thank
have
you.
Jesse Berger.
That's
Welcome,
me.
Jesse.
Hello. Nice to talk to you guys. Thanks for having McKinley and I on.
And
And
we have
Jim.
McKinley Belcher III.
Hey, y'all.
As,
Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming. And he is playing the great role of Aaron.
Yes.
So who are you people? Jesse Berger founded the Red Bull Theater in 2003. And Jesse, looking at your bio, I mean, I don't even know where to begin. I'm just going to hit some of the highlights as I see them.
Thank you.
First of all, founding the Red Bull Theater in 2003. So you're 23 years into this project at this point, which
Mhm,
is
mhm.
almost a quarter of a century. Very impressive.
Yeah. Thank you.
You have published adaptations, you have awards such as the Obie Award, you have initiated Revelation Reading Series, the Red Bull Session Discussion, Shakespeare in the Schools Education Outreach, Master Classes and Classical Education Developmental Workshops. Red Bull is going great guns.
Yeah.
You've directed in New York, you've directed across the country. I see things like Helen Hayes Award in your bio. I see Obie Award in your bio. I see that you were the assistant director of the Shakespeare Theater Company, that you've taught at places like Juilliard, Tisch, Columbia University, Shakespeare Theater Academy, University of Texas at Austin, Guthrie Theater, University of Minnesota, Bard College, New School, just a couple of places here and there. North
I've
Carolina
been around.
School of the
He's in
Arts.
many talents.
But you say that you began your professional career as an apprentice at the Guthrie Theater. And we'll return to that in a
Okay.
moment. Jim, we have another guest, and you'll tell us about him.
Yeah, McKinley appeared off Broadway in Romeo and Juliet, the Classic Stage Company in 2013. In 2016, McKinley won a Drama Desk Award for your performance as amateur boxer Fish in the ensemble of Marco Ramirez's The Royale at Lincoln Center. You also did the world premiere of Rear Window with Kevin Bacon, dual roles of Teddy and Nicholas, and the world premiere of Ken Urban's A Guide for the Homesick at the Huntington, and you won the Elliot Norton Award for Outstanding Actor and an Ernie Award for Best Actor. In 2020, you made your Broadway debut as Private Lewis Henson in the Broadway premiere of A Soldier's Play, and then you made history, Broadway and theater history, as Happy Loman in 2023 production of Death of a Salesman with an all African American cast. Your television work includes many other roles, but the breakout role, according to Wikipedia, was Detective Mike Reut in Netflix Eric's. Eric, I do remember you in Ozark, as well as in Zero Day opposite Robert De Niro. So welcome, McKinley, and welcome, Jesse. We have
Thank you.
just two stellar talents with us today, and I feel very fortunate.
Thank you.
So let's dive into it. Titus Andronicus. So Shakespeare, if you are doing a poll of maybe the top five most recognizable Shakespearean plays, Titus Andronicus is probably not going to be in that list for most people. So in 25 words or less, what the heck is Titus Andronicus?
Well, I'll jump in and try that. Titus Andronicus is one of Shakespeare's earliest plays, but it's one of his greatest. He explores almost all of the great themes that he tackles in later works, including the cycles of revenge, vengeance, honor, race, gender, family dynamics, crumbling empires, transitions of power, and the intersection of power and the political and the personal. How's that? 25 words?
That's pretty
That is
good.
fantastic.
How do
Well
we
done.
know that this is one of Shakespeare's earliest plays?
Well, there you put your finger on somebody who is not a scholar, but I am a practitioner. So we know it because it was included in Shakespeare's first folio, and many scholars have done that kind of research in terms of about when Shakespeare wrote the play. We know Titus from those scholars' work and from the historical records of the theater of the time. We know that it was quite popular in his time. And there's also very strong theories that he didn't write it himself, that a playwright named, I can't remember his first name, Green is his last name, I think, that Green wrote some of the play, perhaps the first act, parts of the second act.
Well, it certainly is a precursor to the Jacobean
Mm.
tragedy. I always referred
Mm.
to it as Shakespeare's version of Friday the 13th.
Yeah, it has a lot in common with a slasher film, and we sometimes called it, Quentin Tarantino meets Shakespeare. But of course, Quentin Tarantino got it from somewhere else. And there were some other plays written before Titus, around the time of Titus, that were quite bloody. And as scholars know, and you guys probably know, the Shakespeare's theater was right next door to the bear baiting pits, and so the idea that there would be a thrilling thriller full of blood and mayhem and beautiful poetry combined. It shouldn't be that surprising to us, but it was very popular in its time, and yeah, I think it has a lot in common with those slasher flicks.
So, Jesse, it's pretty interesting that we're talking about this play because I don't know Red Bill's work as well as I would love to, but I did see 'Tis Pity She's a Whore. Gosh, when
Oh,
was that production?
that was 10 years ago, about
10,
maybe
10
12.
years ago.
Yeah, yeah,
So there are obvious connections here. It's cut from the same cloth as Titus in the sense that it's
yeah.
unapologetically, I don't know if voyeuristic or gratuitous is the right word, but it pulls absolutely no punches. So is this your thing? How much did you dig into this in this
I think
production?
it is. I think it is. It's interesting. I think it's definitely a core part of the Red Bull Theater mission to do the Jacobean plays of Shakespeare and his contemporaries. And ''Tis Pity She's a Whore" is later than the Jacobean period, and Titus Andronicus is earlier than the Jacobean period. So there's not a clean line here. But the playwrights were doing these kinds of plays both before and after, but they're all part of a tradition. And when I started Red Bull Theater and wrote the word Jacobean into the mission, of course, the connotation of Jacobean is often these bloody plays, but the denotation is, of course, just this specific period of time. The first play Red Bull did was Shakespeare's Pericles, and which is technically a Jacobean play. But I loved that the beautiful humanist redemptive story, restorative tale that Pericles represented. So we do other things. But certainly, when you hear the word Jacobean, you think, oh, they do bloody tragedies. And yeah, we do a lot of them. And I think Titus and His Pity, as you said, Garrett, have a lot in common.
We talk about these plays throughout time because we find ourselves in an interesting time, and
Mhm.
I don't think we can get away from the cultural moment that we find ourselves in. We're seeing a lot of productions of Othello, which features a black man who commits violence and murder against a white woman. There are obvious connections to the character of Aaron, who you're playing, McKinley.
Hmm.
Whether he's presented as a two-dimensional villain or something more nuanced he is certainly the primary antagonist and the mastermind behind a slew of heinous acts. So how does this production address the issues of race and racism in the play?
Well, that's a deep question. Um,
Yeah, let's
Dive
jump
right
right
into
into
it.
it.
yeah. I mean, I think they are linked because I, if I'm not mistaken, there are what maybe three roles in Shakespeare's canon that are written for someone who looks like me, even though at that time that it would have been produced by someone who looks like y'all,
Hmm.
made to
Mhm.
look like me.
Right.
I think that's like the Prince of Morocco and the Merchant of Venice, Aaron and Titus and Othello. And so I think a lot of these roles are born out of a lot of cliches and stereotypes and like ideas of a thing rather than sort of the center of a human being. There's part of me that feels like me doing this part is a reclaiming of a sort of redefining. And so it's sort of trafficking in a lot of those ideas and the words used to describe people that maybe they wouldn't necessarily use for themselves. And then figuring out how do we harness that? And then what is the truth inside of those images that have been painted? I remember I was in grad school and I did a scene as Aaron and Titus, and I didn't read the play. And so I did it out of context. But as soon as I started reading the scene, I was like, who is this man?
Yeah.
Uh, and I'm struck by somebody who is sort of walking through a world that constantly insists that he should have no agency, no power, that he should not be in control of his own destiny, and that he should be a specific thing, and that he rages against that and says in action and in word who he is, who he wants to be, and that no one else can control that. I think there's a lot of power in it. And it's true that he is an agent of chaos, but I think our production sort of uses the delicious nature of that, but it's also looking at how, as a person who is likely twice conquered, because he's not really a goth, he's been inside this cycle of violence and retribution. And so the world has taught him that a lot of the reasons why people say they do things are not real and true. And I think he sort of seen the matrix and made his own way of doing the thing, if that makes any sense at all.
Makes great sense.
What I find interesting about Aaron is the sun.
Yeah.
And the speech about the sun and how, you can do whatever you want to me, but don't touch my son, which transcends race and gender and all that stuff about how this is is that his motivation, the sun, or is there something else to him?
I mean, there has to be something else to him because the son is not with us at the beginning of the play.
Right.
I want to say this before I forget, because I agree. I think the son is sort of paradigm shifting, and it's an introduction of something and someone that he probably is not emotionally ready for, and he doesn't know how he's going to feel until he has the baby in his arms, and he's like, oh. I think that's a very human thing to experience. But then at the start of the play, I think if I could pull it down to base terms, I think he's driven by survival and one-upsmanship. And I think he gets off on people thinking he is one thing, but being the puppet master behind the veil.
Yeah, I was going to ask, what does it mean to be a Moor in Shakespeare's England?
It's an interesting thing because I think people sometimes don't know whether to take the word literally or to take it figuratively. And I think the way it's used in a lot of plays, I don't think people are sort of directly referencing North Africa or something. And
Right.
I think they're using it as a blanket term for anyone who is dark complected. So it's meant as a way of categorizing someone and saying, oh, you are not like the other people around you. And in a production of fair-skinned people, it is a way to put someone in their place.
Categorize.
I remember when we were sort of beginning rehearsal, Jesse and I were having conversations about the language and how much of it we should be leaning into. And I'm struck when I first started acting, way back around 2010. I did a production of The Merchant of Venice, and I remember there's this. I'm probably going to butcher the quote, but there's a point where Shylock is speaking to a big group of people, and he's like, "The villainy you teach me, I will execute, and it shall go hard, but I will better the instruction." And to me, that speaks very much to what I understand about Aaron. I think in that sort of cycle of colonialism and violence and the ways that societies act on one another and the reasons they give for that action, I think he has been taught and shown certain things, and he's like, "Oh, got it. I'll do that, and I'll do it one better."
Yeah, he does.
Where is Shakespeare's play Titus Andronicus set?
Well, I'll jump in on that one. It's set ostensibly in a period of Rome, but it's one that never really existed. This is one of Shakespeare's plays that exists outside of any known sources that he might have cribbed it from. He references all sorts of Roman history and Roman gods and Ovid, of course, and he must have read some version of Seneca's Thyestes because that seems to figure in it. But I like to think about it as Shakespeare kind of writing about the fall of Rome in a kind of telescoping way. And even though he's playing fast and loose with history all over the place, so it's almost like it's the entire history of ancient Rome in one play. For our production, we set it in a not too distant future because, as I think one of you alluded to earlier, the times we're living in are not that different from the times that Shakespeare's play seems to deal with in terms of crazy rulers and dangerous motives playing out quite viciously and violently in open society.
It's interesting that, according to the press for this production, the play's exploration, this is a quote, the play's exploration of humankind's capacity for inhumanity is shockingly contemporary. During the first Trump administration, we were seeing productions of Julius Caesar. And during the second administration, we're seeing productions of Titus Andronicus. I'll ask the obvious question, why this play now?
Well, that's one of the reasons. But the other truth is that Red Bull and I've been working on Titus for Red Bull for a long time. When I first started the company 20 years ago, it was one of the first plays that people said, "Oh, so when are you going to do Titus?" And I said, "Well, not for a while. First of all, I need someone to play Titus." And that took a long time. And Patrick Page and I began a conversation in 2019 when he was doing, I think it was 2019, when he was doing Hadestown at New York Theater Workshop. And we started talking about plays we might do together. And Titus was at the very top of our list. And I said, great, well, let's talk more about that. And then we had a pandemic and he had Hadestown on Broadway, and some time passed. After the pandemic, we did a couple of readings and a couple of workshops and, really kind of dipped our toes in the water and then waded in deeper and deeper until this was the year when it seemed like the right time to do it, both for his schedule and for Red Bull Theater as a company. And then then I find this is often true of plays when you're lucky, but it often happens even whether you're in control of it or not, that the plays percolate up and they get done at the time they need to be done. And I felt very strongly that when we got into rehearsal for Titus, I thought, well, I'm so glad we didn't do this last year or the year before, because now is the perfect time. And we were starting rehearsal when the violence in Minneapolis was really flaring up. And so that was on our minds. And we were seeing horrific violence from the authorities on our citizens. And so talking about the violence in Titus didn't seem foreign at all. And unfortunately, it still doesn't if you look around the world or inside our own country. So it percolated up for all sorts of reasons for now. And we were fortunate to get this wonderful company together and to do it in a beautiful theater space that also just happened to be open and available at this time. So I don't know. It's like you make your own karma when you're making theater. But I'm really glad that we're doing Titus now, because it does seem to speak directly to our contemporary concerns without being on the nose about it. It's still allegorical enough that you can go to it and go, wow, look at who we are as human beings, who we have been. Do we really want to treat each other this way? And the way in which we end the play now, we really throw it back at the audience and say, what do you think? What would you do?
It's interesting because the play, and I hope this isn't the case for our world, but the play doesn't have a lot of redemption, unless you've changed that. But
No, I think that's fairly true.
Pretty much everybody suffers.
Well, I think that's when you come see it, you'll see. I think what's nice about our ending, I think, and I think audiences are appreciating it, is that it is kind of left open with a question like, what would sort of, it's not literally this question, but it comes from the play itself. Speak, Roman, speak. What would you say? What would you do? How do you judge the people of Titus? Now look at yourselves. How will you behave as you walk out of this theater? How can you make the world a better place? None of those words are actually said out loud, but I feel like that's the implication of our production. How can we do better?
Yeah, I agree with that. I feel like we end in a way that is like begging the question of like, how do you stop the cycle? Like you have Lucius there at the end, and a baby, and Marcia, and a bunch of people dead. And
and an unrepentant
how does
Aaron.
the cycle not continue?
Well, before we get into the text that you've chosen to share today, tell us a little bit about the character of Aaron. What's his journey?
Well, he begins just after the Goths have been conquered and imprisoned and are being sort of ushered back into Rome, I presume. And I'd imagine that's incredibly complicated. And then your sort of fate is up in the air. You don't know what's going to happen. You don't know what the retribution will be. So you're walking into enemy territory, and that would have been familiar to him to be in that position in an earlier point in his life. He is with Tamara and her two sons. And the audience soon figures out that he is not just her aide, he is also her lover. I think their relationship is very complicated and exciting. And he sort of conspires with her almost off the jump, especially after her son is killed, how to get revenge and how to take control of the situation.
Yeah, every time I've seen this production, and the one that I was in, Tamara and Aaron are pretty hot and heavy.
Oh, yeah. And hopefully we don't disappoint.
No, you don't. We're very, very fortunate to have McKinley as Aaron and the wonderful Francesca Ferradani as Tamara. It's hot and super, super smart.
Well, this speech comes from late in the play. This is Act 5, Scene 1.
It does.
What's just happened? What's the springboard into this speech?
Midway through the play, Tamara is clearly pregnant, and the masses don't know. Well, they assume this is Saturninus' baby. Tamara and Aaron know otherwise. And so when the baby is born and the baby looks like me, she sends the baby to me to kill. And she clearly trusts me to do this and thinks that perhaps I will do this, or I'll find some smart thing to do that means that we won't get in trouble for clearly not Saturnice's baby being there. I don't kill the baby. Instead, I leave to go to the goth camp and seek help, or at least asylum for my child in some way. But I don't know that the tide has turned and that the Goths are now loyal to Lucius. And so on the way there, they sort of catch me and imprison me and take me back to Rome. So this scene is sort of being ushered back into the Roman camp by the Goths and meeting Lucius face to face again. And I'm sort of bartering information and the truth as a way of my son having safe harbor and being protected by Lucius specifically.
So you become a double agent.
A double agent.
So to speak. Yeah.
So you're asked if you're sorry for some horrible crime that you've committed.
Yeah, I basically list out all the things I've done over the course of the play. Because I said, well, if you say you'll protect my son, I'll tell you everything I did. And so I list out everything that I say that I did in glorious detail. And he's like, and I'm relishing in what I've done because I'm proud of myself. And yeah, he's asking, well, aren't you sorry for this?
Well, can we hear the list?
Oh, sure.
Yeah,
On the spot. All right.
Yeah. Well, no. I think let's start with.
Okay.
I want to hear some of the nasty deeds that you've done.
I'll do both. Indeed, I was their tutor to instruct them. That lustful spirit had they from their mother. That bloody mind I think they learned of me. Well, let my deeds be witness of my worth. I trained thy brothers to that guileful hole where the dead corpse of Bassianus lay. I wrote the letter that thy father found and hid the case of gold beneath the tree. I played the cheater for thy father's hand, and when I had it, drew myself apart and almost broke my heart with extreme laughter. And when I told the empress of this sport, she swooned almost at my pleasing tale, and for my tidings gave me 20 kisses. I, like the black dog, as the saying is, that I had not done 1,000 more. Even now, I curse the day, and yet I think few come within the compass of my curse, wherein I did not some notorious ill as kill a man, or else devise his death, ravish a maid, or plot the way to do it, set fire to barns and haystacks in the night, and bid the owners quench them with their tears. Oft have I digged up dead men from their graves and set them upright at their dear friend's door, even when their sorrow almost was forgot. And on their skins, as on the bark of trees, have with my knife carved in Roman letters, let not your sorrow die, though I am dead. Tut! I have done 1,000 dreadful things as willingly as one would kill a fly, and nothing grieves me heartily indeed, but that I cannot do 10,000 more.
Yeah, thank you.
Come on, he's dug up bodies and set them outside the friends of the deceased, and then wrote graffiti saying, ha ha ha, suck it.
Yeah.
It's a funny thing because I feel like we were talking about this in rehearsal too, that I think it is to be taken literally that I have done these things or versions of these things, but it's also in a way metaphorically what I'm doing in this moment. I'm taking all of the horrible things that I've done to his family and the ways that he thinks they've died, that he's mistaken in it, and putting it right in his face to vex him and to show him and give him evidence of that I am far more powerful than you ever thought I was.
And do you think that the second list of things, he's done all those things, or is he fibbing some of them?
I think he's done a version of them all. I think it's possible that some of them are inflated or like said with more colorful language than the literalness of what was done. But I think he's done a version of those things. Yeah.
And is this a dead man's speech? I mean, do you think, does Aaron think he's a dead man, so he's revealing all of this, or?
I think they've already said or intimated that they're going to kill me. And I've gotten the thing that was important to me. If I know I'm out of here, my son is safe, and if I'm bartering the truth, then let me give the truth in the most satisfying way to myself. And I will live on in his mind. There's also a part of me that thinks that in a way he has accepted his fate, but I think he's also still also an incredibly smart person, and they think they're going to put him in a hole, then that's going to be the end of him. We don't see Aaron die at the end of the play.
That's
We
right.
just see that he's put somewhere and told that that will be his end.
Right.
Or
Yeah,
he might
that's
say
right.
otherwise.
He's too smart. I mean, I agree. Like, yes,
Yeah.
he might be a dead man talking or dead man walking, but if there's a way out, he'll find it. Similar in Othello with Iago, we never see his actual punishment, and he does the opposite. And I think Iago is more related to Aaron than Othello is, I think.
Mhm.
But it's almost like Shakespeare split Aaron into two characters when he wrote Othello, and maybe Iago and Othello. But Iago, what does he say? He says, "I never shall speak more," or something from this
Right.
time forward.
Yeah,
Is
he
that
goes
Death
right?
is
mute.
silence.
He's like, "That's it,"
Yeah,
and
that's
that's
it.
almost worse, right?
Yeah.
No,
But
no.
it's like 10 years later, what Shakespeare did with that kind of a villain.
So
Yes.
how, as an actor, do you approach that thing where it's just a list of items that I've done, right? And there's not necessarily movement like a to be or not to be in the speech. How do you approach it?
I think about like, why am I saying this? What is my relationship to the things that I am listing? I think with this specific list, there is a kind of relish and celebration of, and we sort of taken it out of our version of the play. But earlier in the scene, I literally say, I'm saying this to fucking vex you.
Right.
And then there's also like the beauty of Shakespeare is that I do think of it not just as music, but it is also music. So like I think the vowels and sounds that he's giving you to say can often guide us to like where it is we need to go if we fully lean into like playing the music of the thing. So I guess I would say that's helpful. Understanding who you're talking to and what you're trying to do to them, understanding why you're saying these things and what your relationship to each individual listed item is, and then leaning into the language music of it all.
Mm,
And it will help you sort of shape it into something that is not just 1 through 12.
right.
Yeah.
Milk, like I always use milk, eggs, and cheese. It's,
Milk, eggs, and cheese.
yeah,
I
exactly.
mean, there are some tricks like that that, of course, you
Yeah.
can
Right.
employ. Exactly right. Using the conjunction, not conjunction, the conjunctive word. Is that the right word?
Right.
You know what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Conjunction junction.
And but McKinley does it so beautifully and naturally in our
Wonderful.
production. But you're right. You can build a mountain. You can do it technically, and you kind of have to do it technically and emotionally at the same time.
So what
Mm.
do you do? What do you do with a play like this? Because our modern sensibility is to try to humanize everyone. Really, I think
Mm-hmm.
that is our instinct as theater makers, right? But
Mm-hmm.
in a sense, like these plays are structured in a certain way where we're presented with the extremes who are designed to be foils to the characters who are more complex. In a way, does that jive with your
Yes,
reading of the play? Or
I would jump in and say that I think everyone in Titus is writ pretty extreme. I don't think one or another character has more complexity. There are some characters who get to say more, but I think we apply the same our humanity directly, knowing that these characters were written by a human being and they were based on stories. There might be a sense of reaching for archetypal or mythological kind of characteristics, but those also come from the human experience. So to me, it's the same as telling a story of Greek mythology or doing Homer's Odyssey or an Iliad and approaching those kind of characters. You approach them from your McKinley can speak better to it as an actor, but as a director, I'm looking for the ways in which they connect to real people, and we want to get to that sense of scale because the way myth or this kind of storytelling, classical theater in particular, can reach a modern audience, I think, is not by trying to make it more contemporary, but by trying to bring an audience along to the scale of the human experience writ large. as an allegory for our own experience. And you see it in superhero movies now. If you went and watched, I don't know, Pulp Fiction, or, are those characters realistic, or, or are they writ large in the same way as Shakespeare's plays are? So I think if the human behavior within the actor's interpretation and the concept around them from the directors and designers is truthful, then I don't think one has to make it seem any more real, because people will find that truth. That we'll find it together. We'll meet them in the middle, the audience and the actors.
I think it's also a thing of like, no matter how two-dimensional the thing seems at first, the gig is to fill out the corners and to find,
Right.
well, why would a human being do this? And that inevitably informs some of like the extraneous pieces that you have to do throughout the play. I mean, I think for me, specifically with Aaron, like it isn't for me to like lean away from villainy. Like part of the gig is to find why he takes pleasure in it, to lean into that in a way. But that wouldn't be all that interesting to watch if that's the only thing I did. Like there's a reason why he got here. And my job is to sort of find the breadcrumbs that led here.
Yeah, that's well said, McKinley, and you do that
Yeah.
so beautifully. And I think that's one of the beauties of the collaboration is, there were times when I was like, oh, maybe McKinley, maybe you want to try that a little, maybe we should soften that or change this word. And you were often keeping me honest and saying, no, actually, I think I can find a way to bring my truth to that, and keep the truth of the character honest and be true to Shakespeare's intent.
McKinley, what defines a successful production for you as an actor?
No one's ever asked me that before. Selfishly, I would say if it's something I can feel from beginning to end, I feel alive through, and it feels honest, and I feel changed by from beginning to end. Altruistically, like in terms of like the people I'm giving it to, if I can hear people listening, and it isn't about laughter per se, but it is about a sort of exchange, which can be a number of things. If I can feel the audience sort of in conversation with us, then I know we're doing something right. And then the other things like that are signposts to me that like this is going very well. It doesn't happen in every single production, or it doesn't even happen in every show, but like there are definitely moments in shows where I call it like the blackout effect, where I don't remember exactly what happened, but it means I was present and present with the people around me, and that includes the audience. And when that can happen in many places in a production, I know we're doing something right. And then the last thing I would say is it's usually present in the rehearsal room, where there's a spirit of collaboration, and the truth that we're finding and the way it looks and feels on stage is not any one person's idea. It's something that is being created between a group of people. And I think I'm sure Jesse can attest to this. You can sometimes be in a process where one person is dominating that or is holding it with an iron fist. And it's one of the things I love about Jesse is that he has an incredibly collaborative spirit. It does not mean he is not capable of leading, but I think leading, especially in a rehearsal room, is about sort of creating an environment where people can bring their best selves to creation. And then like the best idea and the best stuff we can do is usually between us, not from any one person. And so when I feel like that is happening and happening all the way into getting in front of an audience, it makes me feel like, oh, we're making something really special here.
That could also be the definition of a relationship.
Yes.
Well,
Yes.
that's true. Yeah, that's true.
But yeah, very well said. I mean, those are great markers. And I want to just go back to that unspoken thing that happens in live theater between the audience and the actors on stage, and how I think that unspoken thing that you refer to, McKinley, is the thing that will never let theater die.
Yeah, I think it's so beautiful, and it's one of the things that I will never resort only to the stuff on camera, because you can't experience that sort of communal. In a way, it's almost like a sort of spiritual and almost like church in a way, because it's like a communal thing that it can only happen in the now between this group of people, and after we all leave, it goes away, and there's something very beautiful and sobering about experiencing that with a group of people.
I agree. Well, I appreciate that, and I would also say the same thing. Well, you wanted to talk about the Guthrie. I'll bring in the director I've worked with in my first in those years as a young apprentice was Garland Wright, and what he called it was the shared act of imagination. But I always hold on to that. Like, yeah, that's what we want. We want people to come together and actually create something together, because it's not complete until we have have that audience in the room that are willing to use their imaginations with us. And so, and we do a lot in Titus that's about that, particularly around the violence. But many of the acts of violence, you think you saw it, but you didn't. You think you see Aaron chop off Titus's hand, but you didn't actually. It was all in your imagination. If you think that was a horrible act of stage violence, actually, it's an amazing trick of your imagination, filling in the gaps. Almost every instance of violence, in fact, but it is beautiful, and that's why I started a theater company dedicated to these kind of plays, because to me it's where we can come together across cultures and divides and ethnicities and all sorts of things, and really work out what it means to be human together.
Well, you both are such gifted storytellers. You brought it full circle so beautifully. There's nothing left to do but thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
You've got just a couple more weeks to see McKinley's fantastic performances, Aaron. So I don't know when this podcast is going live, but if so, you can edit this out if the plug is not useful. But it's a strange play to say that you will enjoy. But I have to say that it's a very enjoyable, cathartic experience in the theater. You get laughs, you get thrills, you get tears, and you get chills, and you get something that's really powerfully true to the moment that we're living in today. It's running through May 3rd at the Signature Theater. Our website is redbulltheater.com. I hope everyone listening will join us.
We'll probably put a button on it there, but just indulge me since we have a few more minutes. I want to ask another
Sure.
question another question to you, Jesse. We'll start with you and McKinley, maybe if you'd like to reflect on this too. Jesse, reading your bio, I don't want to call you an old man. You're not an old man. We're the same generation.
Thank you.
But I mean, when you read a bio, like there's an impressive body of work behind you. You're certainly at a place in your journey where you have come to many crossroads, I imagine. Many crossroads, and there are places where all of us think, well, if I'd made a different decision here, if I'd taken this opportunity, if I just approached this situation a little bit differently, my whole life could be different. So I'm going to ask you about, once upon a time you were the apprentice at the Guthrie Theater. If you could go back in time, sneak into your bedroom or whatever, and whisper something in your ear that you would remember, what would that be?
Ooh.
Well, that's a very powerful
Yeah,
question that
I'm
needs to
waiting
go to
for
I need to go to the therapist for that one. I mean, it would be advice to my younger self more. It wouldn't be about a different choice so much as treasure these moments and trust in the future, because I don't have any regrets, and I got so much out of that time and those years. That it took a long time before I was brave enough to start Red Bull Theater, but I wanted to start a theater company even back when I was at the Guthrie. I was dreaming about, I want to be a director and an artistic director, and I came up to the door of doing it a few times in my 20s, but I waited a long time, and it was the right time for me. So I think I would just exhort myself to have a little patience, have a little faith, and enjoy the moment that I'm in more.
McKinley.
I mean, there's only one thing I regret that I would change. So I think most of the things I would say to myself would pertain to having the courage to be yourself. I think as artists, the thing that is most powerful about what we do is are the same things as the things that are most individual to you. There will be people who are more beautiful than you, who can learn text faster than you, who can be more artful at whatever. It doesn't really matter. But there's a way that life has shaped you, and the way you hear the music of the thing, and the way your instrument sounds and the way it plays, that is very individual to you. And you never want to be hiding or running away from that. You want to be leaning into, celebrating, standing in that fully. So I think all the things I would say to myself would be encouragements to relish in the things that are individual and specific about me.
To take those two ideas that you both just expressed and drop it into our students' ears, because it's so true. I mean, it's so true to use yourself, right? To use your unique gifts to create something, and it's amazing.
Yeah, I appreciate, I agree, and I appreciate what you two do for young people in that regard. And if you can get them to listen, that's the hard part, right? I'm not sure I would have heard you say that when I was that age. I'm not sure I would have been able to take it in, but
that's also the beauty of life, though.
Yeah.
It's I feel like I remember a lot of things that various professors said in grad school, and maybe I audibly heard it when I was there, but then a year or two, 5 years, 6 years later,
Mhm.
I'm like, oh,
Yeah,
that's what
exactly.
they meant.
That's what we're
So
counting on.
I love when people say it even when someone is not ready to hear it, because maybe they'll hear it audibly now, but then they'll like soulfully hear it in a year or two or
Later.
10
That's
years down the
true.
road.
Yeah.
Boy, that is so true. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
Thank you. It's a lovely conversation to have. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Jesse and
Thank
McKinley,
you.
thank you so much for joining us today. It's been a
What a
Thank you.
pleasure
pleasure.
talking to you.
Fantastic.
I'm
Thank
Garrett
you. Have a great
Vandermeer.
day.
And I'm Jim Elliott.
Thank you for listening to The State of Shakespeare. That's it, Gus. Thanks.
Thank you,
That
you
was
too.
an hour well spent. Really
Oh
appreciated
my
the
God.
conversation.
You
So
guys
great.
asked some really great questions. I'm like, yes to that
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
Thanks,
I was
McKinley.
not
Appreciate it.
This
expecting
is not a
that.
fluff piece.
Yeah.
No,
No,
not at all.
very nice. Very nice to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for the State of Shakespeare podcast. We invite you to visit stateofshakespeare.com for more episodes, information about each of our guests, and the Shakespeare text you heard on the program, and much more. And we welcome you to join the discussion by liking us on Facebook. That's www.stateofshakespeare.com. Thanks for listening.